Jason, it's so funny because when I was doing the background research on you, just reading about your background got me all pumped up. Like I was like getting ready for this interview. I was like, it's go time. Let's do this. I was just trying to imagine what you were like because of what you do for a living. So I'm so excited to dive into it. But first, we have an icebreaker question, and you chose the one that we get so excited about. So we have to know, what's the wildest thing that's happened to you as a solopreneur?
I think it's hard to just pin on one. So the first thing that came to mind is the second apartment building I bought in Louisville, Kentucky. I was living in New Jersey, right? So second building I bought was 48 units. We did everything right in terms of just all the due diligence, all the inspections, everything right, which usually leads you for all different things that can go wrong that you don't know at the time, right? So 2 days in, the water goes out in the entire building, right? And on that part, what had happened is that over time they had built a lift system because the sewer line for that building was below the road and they had built up the road, right? So over time, the sewer line in the road, right, was now higher than the building. So the power, the water goes out for the entire building. And so all of a sudden we have a building that's working. And we're like, well, did we not pay? What did we do? Like, what happened? What messed up? Well, the lift station went down, and all of a sudden the feedback was this system was built in China and it was going to take 4 months to get something back. So the tenants would just magically not have water for 4 months. And I was like, well, that's probably not going to work, right? So over the course of the next 18 hours, luckily we had a good enough team that was able to find this company in town that could go fabricate something to actually meet this to get the water back up. But for the matter of fact of what we thought was a great investment for the day we brought it, 2 days later, we're worried that we're going to have to just vacate the entire building, find a way to put all these tenants up in hotels. And on this point, just deal with a building that had no income, no revenue, and then have a loan where the bank wasn't going to be happy with us. Lo and behold, another 18 hours later, we have the problem fixed with, just some happy tenants because we just helped them all along the way to just get porta potties out there, get bottled water. But that would be the first one. The second one was, my buildings are just in, workforce neighborhoods. And in a matter of 1 week, we had 3 different tenants die. And it was all of natural causes. All the tenants were in like they're like 70s or 80s, completely unassociated, but just randomly. It was like the third one. We're like, wait, so the first one? We're like, no, there was a second one. We're like, what do you mean there was a second one? Well, yeah, this other person passed away. And over the course of just 1 week, we just randomly never had this happen again. Just 3 tenants just passed away all at the same apartment building. It was 94 units, right? So that's a pretty good percentage of the building, right? Just randomly passed away. But it was that okay. And I think that was the third building where it just randomly happened. And then you were looking at that, just making sure that it wasn't anything nefarious, anything outside of the box, right? But it just was all natural causes.
But that was one building. They all
One
lived in the
building.
same.
All in the same.
Oh
all
my
in the
God!
same
I would
room.
have been like, "What's going
And like
on?"
it wasn't like something like where there was anything like weather. So it was just random, like in the spring.
Did you have a moment where you're like, is something wrong with the building?
Right.
Yeah. Well, the
A
first one,
Legionnaire's
like, you know what, like,
disease, or
yeah, like natural, like it just happens, right? You have this many units, but then the second one, you think they're talking about the first one. You get to the third one, and you're like, "What is going on?" But then, within it was all cured. It was all caused. Nothing outside of the box. It just was a random, completely outside the box thing that happened.
it happens.
That
But
is wild.
it's
Well,
freaky. That is freaky.
I don't like hearing stories about people passing away, but we do like hearing stories of solopreneurs in the trenches just because we've all been there. We've all had those moments of what is happening and trying to kind of organize the chaos around you. But Jason, the main reason you're here today is you are so big on mindset. And I think for solopreneurs, that is so key for running a successful business. So if it's okay with you, I do want to pick your brain a little bit. And let's start with your live 100. Or your live 100. Can you explain kind of the pillars of that and how it can apply to solopreneurs? Because I think kicking off the episode with that can kind of lay the foundation with everything else I want to talk about with you.
Yeah, so it really had me looking in reverse, right? I was getting a lot of questions about how we had gotten to a certain level of success. Today, we own a little over 3,000 units, about 350 million in real estate we've acquired across 7 states. But if you look back, 20 years, I was a bartender living in New York City, right? I had left school with a finance degree, had no desire to go into that route, and moved into New York City just picking up odd jobs and just wasn't happy with the direction of my life, right? So did that for a number of years. Just didn't like where I was, but I wasn't making any change, right? Because mentally, you're just thinking, well, it's everybody else's fault, right? You point outwards. It was, my upbringing, my school, my friends. It was the weather. You could pick anybody, right? But ultimately, I started just looking at one day. I was leaving work at like 2:30 to 3 in the morning. Got on my bike, rode across Manhattan, and out of nowhere, got hit by a car. 2 days later, I have like a broken wrist, a crack in my shoulder. I got some stitches in a couple places. I'm out of the hospital. I'm thinking like, all I need to do right now, I have to get back to work because I have to make money for rent. And on that front, I was like, wait, that is the craziest thing. All I'm doing is complaining about what I'm doing. And now I get hit by a car and all I want to do is get back to where I don't want to be. So I made this agreement with myself that I didn't know how to change things, right? Sometimes when you're so in the thick of it, right, you just don't know how to change things. And you're just like stuck, like, I don't know how to do anything different. So you just keep doing the thing over and over and again that you don't like. Well, I said, I'm just going to try the opposite. Stop staying out late at night. Don't go and have a drink after work. Start getting up at a set time. Start getting a workout regimen in. Start doing these things that were consistently change the pattern. But I didn't know what the pattern would change to, but it started to give me some momentum where over time I started to have less negative, fill up with more positive. And that little positivity started to grow, which started to compound. And I went from, working behind the bar. I got the prowess to go. I opened a bar, opened a restaurant, opened and sold a brewery before moving into the world of construction, where my dad had a company for a long time. So we helped him really expand that business, a lot targeted to when Hurricane Sandy happened. His business really grew because that was his business was really targeted at raising homes. He had done that for almost 45 years before we were helping him get to retirement. So we did that. And then we started moving into the world of real estate because, my wife was pregnant with our first child. We had no time because we were working. If we was 25 hours a day, we worked 25 hours a day. And I started saying, man, okay, I have to make some change so I can control my day back. Because as you know, as a solo entrepreneur, there's always more stuff to do. There's always one more thing. There's always 10 more things. There's always another call to make. There's always one more thing to get done. You're always running from thing to thing to thing. And I said, well, what can I do? And that's where we found the world of buying apartment buildings. And that started to allow me to get to time where I could put together the plan, put together the process, and put together the team that runs the process while I manage the process. So I had to look back at what did I do? Like, what did I change across that? And Live 100 was bred upon that and just 3 foundational blocks. I had to break the habits that no longer serve me so I could start building the foundation, building the life that I truly want. And then once I start to get the momentum, I can magnify those results. And the first piece of that is just be self-aware of how I was showing up. I wasn't showing up in a good state. I wasn't showing up as a person that really, truly, lots of times we have goals, right? But the person who would achieve those goals is not the person you're showing up as today. You have negative thoughts. You're not talking in a good way. You're not taking care of yourself. You're not being good in your relationships. You're not really serving the narrative of the person that would achieve that goals. And when you can do that, you can start to own it. You say, okay, I'm not being that person. But if I want to be that person, how is that person that achieves the goals? If I am going to be the solo entrepreneur that goes out there to accomplish my mission, to get where I want, how does that person show up? And then you can start positioning yourself to be that person. And that's that core part of just breaking your patterns so you can start really building a path forward that gets you the results that you deserve.
That's really interesting because, we always talk about, well, starting with your goals, right? Think about what you want before you start building, because you might build something that doesn't serve you, but you've taken us back yet another step. And the funny thing is, we talk about the goals as being step 0.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've given us like step -1. So this is really interesting, but I don't know, I maybe should have not called it step 0 because people hate negative numbers.
But sometimes you have to go back into that part, right? And like it's we all want the goals, right? But there's a part of the goals that you have to make sure you're living your goals. And I've seen, like, social media is fantastic. You can accomplish all kinds of things. You can make relationships, all these things. But what happens many times is that we see somebody else's goals and we transcend that to maybe that should be our goal. But it's not truly your goal, right? Because you haven't truly dove into really deep dived into what you really want, because you're looking at this thing. But then because it's not really your goal, you don't really put the work in to be and go after that goal. Because you say, if you hit it, cool. If you don't hit it, it's fine too, because you really didn't determine that was your goal. You just saw it somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right. I want to go back to the self-awareness really quick because it's funny. My husband and I, we just got back from a week-long vacation. I told you we went to Backstreet Boys at the Sphere. And that we really had a lot of time to think. And it was funny because prior to that, we were in the mountains and we love hiking and everything. And we think we are avid outdoors people, hikers, like trail runners and everything. And then we take a step back and we're like, we do that like once a month. Like the people we think we are not the people we are. And we're like, gosh, how do we have such a skewed view of who we are? But it's really who we want to be. So do you have any specific strategies or exercises to kind of enhance that self-awareness?
Yeah, and you could talk about that as perception versus perspective, right? Our perception of what is versus the perspective of what somebody else may see it as. And many times you can look at that in a way, and you have to be kind to yourself in a way that you want to label how you're showing up, but you don't want to punish yourself. Just because you're showing up in that way. Like, so right now, like I like to think of it as like, King Arthur's like Knights at the Round Table, right? There was all these different people that came together to try and like stop war. And that's like what's happening in your mind. Like each and every day you go through this part where you have all these different things competing for your attention, right? You might have love, kindness, ambition, but you might have, gluttony, greed, hatred, right? And they're all competing for a seat at that table. And so you have to look at yourself and just be honest with yourself, right? In this moment, right? If someone cuts me off, is my first thing I want to go out there and give them the finger, start screaming out the window, right? Or am I saying, well, shoot, okay, that just happened. Luckily, no one was hurt. Okay, just move on my day, right? Are you letting these things ruin your day that are like 1 second things? And if it is, we have to go back and say, okay, in that moment, I'm showing up aggressive. I'm showing up angry. So the person that is in a calm mode, that when something comes down in my business, it's going to be tough. Will that person show up when something comes up tough that's going to be monumental to my growth in my business? Can I show up as an aggressive person? Can I show up as an angry person? Or do I have to show up as a reasonable, rational person who's clear, no matter how crazy or how busy it is, to be able to make a clear decision? And one thing you can do to do that is, if you're looking at everything as a problem or an issue, you have to say, okay, is that the way to look at it? Or is it for me saying I'm a problem solver? As a solo entrepreneur, you are a problem solver. That's all you do every day, no matter how you like it. You are out there to solve problems, and you're the person who's solving everything from the CEO level down to literally the janitor. Like, you fill all the roles. So you have to look at it and say, okay, is this a 5-second problem or a 5-year problem? And the difference being is that if it's a 5-second problem, it's something that just come up in a moment, and you just have to deal with it. And in a week, in a month, you're not even going to remember it happened. And then a 5-year problem is something that's happening right now that's detrimental or very big, monumental to your business, that you have to put all your intention in. But what happens as someone who's on a level of dealing with everything themselves, we get so busy that we treat everything at its own level, right? We treat the 5-second and the 5-year problems exactly the same. And what that does is it basically wipes out our energy, because we're operating always on like 8,000 RPM, right? We're constantly at this high level. Instead of just saying, okay, it's a 5-second problem, just get it done, move on. Okay, so now I have all the energy. So when that big thing comes up in my business, that could be really core, really instrumental to my success, or also could be very painful for me in the future, I can put all of my energy into that and make sure I get the decision right.
Yeah, it's even just talking right now, it's like, oh, there's just so much going on. But you talk about taking action over perfection. So how, if a solopreneur is experiencing analysis paralysis, what recommendations do you have?
So Tony Robbins says progress, right? That's the biggest thing to have, right? And when you look at things, perfection is just a fancy way of saying not doing anything, right? Because we're always just getting to that part where we're just constantly waiting on something else to feel like it's perfect, but it's always going to be forming, right? Every time you get to your goal, we think the goal is going to be the solve, right? If I get to $1 million, or I get this number of clients, or I get this average, monthly revenue, or I meet this fantastic person, then I will be this. But what happens is that's just another day in your life. And so when you're looking at perfection, right, what you have to get back to is the actions. Your goal, you don't know what form your goal comes in. You might get very close to your goal. You might not get close to your goal. You might not, you might just massively exceed your goal. But the first thing you have to do is just identify that first step. That's the most important thing. Like, if you just take a step, it's going to give you usually 3 different directions, right? You take a step, you're like, that was absolutely the wrong direction. Okay, now I learned something. Okay, don't do that. Go the opposite direction. Or I take a step, it's kind of in the right direction, right? But it's not right. Well, okay, so how can I look at this and pivot into the right direction? Because now you've learned something there. Or the third step is you take a step and it's right on point. Okay, you take another step, and then you do that same process again and again and again. And then it slowly gets you to that goal, but it also helps you get intention, get action going, which gives you momentum and starts to breathe. But the fourth that you don't talk about is that you can also just take no action, right? And that's where sometimes perfection comes in. You're worried about perfection. And we don't think of that, but that's also a very big choice. If you take no action, that's it. That is a choice in itself. You have to take action at some part to get a result, because the no action, you already know you're in that position now. The no action is where you want. So if you want to change, you want to find some different course, you have to take action. But we treat it like it's like stepping off a 10-story building, right? We think if we do something, it's like, oh, I'm taking this big grand jump. But if you just look at it, you break it down into points, right? Like, so like if you want to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro, you're just not going to go and just jump on a mountain, right? You're going to be like, okay, first step, like, what country is it in? Like, that might be the first step. Or like what gear do I need, right? Or, what are some of the processes, how long it takes, right? You start doing things that start leading you on the path, but you slowly build the momentum. But what happens is most people, like, they think they're jumping off that building when in fact, they're just taking a step off the curb. And then that starts making it real because they can do something that they can accomplish. Usually what happens, like 92% of New Year's resolutions fail. Why? It's because there's no foundation to them, right? Today, you're out all the time, you're drinking, you haven't worked out in 6 months. And then tomorrow you're going to get up at 6 a.m. every day and somehow you're going to make $1 million and you made 63,000 last year, right? How are you going to make this change? There's no plan or purpose behind it because you haven't built this foundation. But if you just start setting the stage of like, hey, what would the steps be, right? What would that first step be? That gives you confidence to go out there and learn something. And when we're learning, we're proactive, it gives us the ability to start building some confidence that starts building some energy along our path.
So a lot of times if people aren't achieving their goals, it's because they have limiting beliefs. But sometimes they don't know what those limiting beliefs are, right? Like, so apparently I'm turning this into my own little personal coaching session. So sorry, Joe. But like, obviously there are some limiting beliefs holding my husband and I back from being the people that we think that we are. But I don't know what those are because I'm just like, well, I will figure it out.
Yeah.
How can people uncover those limiting beliefs and not only uncover them, but like get rid of them?
It's really identifying what that person would be. Like you say, you like to be an outdoor person. Like, why can't someone who goes out one time a month be an outdoor person? Right? Most people like never go outside, never go hiking, never go anywhere. Right? Like, so it's just like identifying like what that actually means. Like, if you want to go out there and be someone who loves to be outside, and you do it once a month, that's probably, I don't know the math, but you would think it's probably like 95% more than everybody else. You know, there's probably 5% of people that are doing it more than you, maybe, and probably less. Right?
I gotta jump in too. I'm sorry, Carly, but you've got two little kids, like little kids. You are working as a fractional CMO for Lifestar. You're writing a book, a large book, or at least half of a very large book with me. And, I mean, there's only a certain number of hours in a day. So I'm not sure you're being fair to yourself to say that I think you've got limiting factors, not limiting beliefs as much, So sorry to,
in my mind, I wrote the book in the woods. And we
Yeah.
share with the kids in the woods.
But you can also give
And-
yourself gratitude, right? Like, lots of times we always go from the point of lack, but we forget to like, so you're doing all those things, right? Which I was unaware of, but then they have given you the ability to be able to go out there and go out, do things in the woods one time a month, right? Where the majority of people are like, waking up late, just don't like what they're doing. They're rushing to work. They're eating some poor because they go into a job that's like fires all day because they don't like where they are. They get in the car that at the end of the day, they drive home, they watch Netflix, have a beer and say never again, right? And they repeat that for how many years, right? And that's because they haven't taken outside the box to just take some control, right? And a lot of what I had to do was take back control because I was in that pattern where it's just the day was running me. But you've turned it around where you do all these things that inspire you, like doing. And that gives you the opportunity to go out there and do this. Could you do it 2 days a month? Probably, but you choose one. That's fantastic too, right? And so usually we forget to give ourselves gratitude for what we have because it's very easy to point out what we don't have.
I love that answer. Love that answer.
Yeah, that is so true. And I will be more grateful moving forward.
Hardest thing, right? It's hard to look at because we always, and that's where like I point back at social media, but it's tough. It's like, every time if you go on social media, there is always someone who is magically doing some fantastic thing that you feel like you should have. I'd be like, oh, and like you're like, it's just destined that we should have. But really, if we truly look at it, like, probably wouldn't even be happy if we had that, right? But we envision other people's lives to mean that we should have that.
What have you ever gotten or achieved, especially materially, that a year later still had any impact on your positive happiness? I mean, for me, I've never had that happen. I've never had something, it's a week, 2, 3, maybe a month, but a year, no way. I'm right back to the same level I was before because no thing can do that, right?
Yeah, I would say what I've learned is experiences matter more than the possessions, right? If you can go and like, we've last, month, we, had the fortune, we were in, we were in Paris, we were in London. My wife's from Hawaii, so we're in Hawaii, for that part. And I have 3 kids, 6, 8, and 10. And it was fantastic. It was like, like the experience, you get to do those things, right? Those stand out. Those are memorable. But if I like brought them, whatever, like it would be like, okay, cool. There's okay, cool. And then what's the next thing, right? And you look at that and you say, well, that's where you can build, right? And that's why you're doing all these things. And so you can go out there and have the experience, like, because the possession, sounds cool in the moment, but you're right. Like, a year from now, you're not like, well, I got that car,
I got to bike across from Amsterdam to Bruges, Belgium with
Oh,
my wife
cool.
and two of my kids.
Yeah.
You never forget it.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
amazing.
they were adult at the time, but it was just, that stuff never goes away.
Yeah, my friend's family routinely, like every 5 years, would do that in France and Italy. They would do they would do like a 2 week tour of just bicycling through that, and they'd have like 10 people go. It always looked like the most fantastic trip.
Yeah, it's a blast.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of being active and motivated, Jason, you, sir, are quite the ultra runner. Is that what you would call yourself?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm on the massive stage of ultra run, but I do them, right, and I've done them, right, and so that's part of my life is running, right, and doing them. And so what I found is that y- again, like I had to find my own path, right? So I get up and I work out daily, and it usually accomplishes. I have a mix of things I do, but it accomplishes something with kettlebells, something active or running, or I'll go to jujitsu, or 2 days a week I'll go to CrossFit, right? And so I usually break it up in that pattern, and that's like I get up early, I have that time, I get that workout in, then I can go be present with my family, and then get on and get to my day. And the one piece from that is that you look at work and there's many things you have to get done, right? But as a solo entrepreneur, that never ends. Like you could just you work all day, work all night, work all day, work all night, just repeat, repeat, repeat. But setting the precedent where I had to get up, I'm getting my workout in, right? Whether I want to or not, I do it. I want to be present to take my kids to school, and then after I coach some of their teams or I go to their sports, right? I make that as a commitment, as like a non-negotiable. So in the middle, and even after, whenever, there's the important things at work that have to be done, and it sets me priority where I can't come in here and just like waste time just like filling it with like nonsense. I have to make sure that I'm intentional with what I'm doing here because I have these other things that I've committed to, right? And so it created a hierarchy in my life. I have my family, I have my fitness, I have my work, and it's very important. I have hundreds of investors that invest with us, right? So we take this as a highest purpose, but we also have to make sure that we're using that time efficiently. So when that time comes, today it's 5 o'clock to wellness practice, whatever time that is, I'm there because I've done the things that need to get done and I haven't wasted time just filling gaps.
So you kind of just described what a day in the life of Live 100 looks like for you. How often do you kind of press pause, reevaluate, and reimagine it, I guess?
You can look backwards, right, and see how it forms. And I think as I get older, it's allowed me to just really set those principles. So I constantly build into there, right? And it changes in the seasons too, right? You get in the summer, there might be some travel. So how am I going to change it when I'm traveling, right? And then, different time zones or whatever. Then if they're not in school, how does that change, right? I might spend some more time in them in the morning, then I might work later, right? So I'm constantly in the seasons instead of just looking at, how's a day reflecting or I'm looking at the season of time. Right. We have projects that will be closing over the next 30 days. So there's going to be more commitment on that side because I have to make sure everything's buttoned up, everything's dialed in, our takeover plans in complete the right direction to be ready for that. Right. So you're looking at the season between where the family is, right? Where my business is to where my energy has to go. If I'm preparing for a race, there's going to be that season where I need to be putting in more miles than I am on just the average week because I'm preparing that. So someone said to me a long time ago, it was more about the season than is trying to find the balance because the balance is never perfect because at all times it constantly adapts. So you can look at the season you're in and then reflect on that season and look at that season. Then you can find the right approach for what you need, what buckets need the most attention.
Yeah, such a great point. And before we go on or before we wrap things up, can you just quickly recap the pillars of Live 100 again, just
Yeah,
succinctly so that people have them as a
sure.
reminder?
So Live 100, it's built on the 3 blocks, which is break, build, and magnify. And the break block, the three that are most pivotal, right, is that we always want to go to the build and we want to go to the magnify. But we don't want to work on ourselves, right? And that's the hardest thing is that you have to be that person to show up in the right mind, right? 60, 70,000 thoughts a day, 80%, which are repeated, right? If you have a big inkling of just negativity in your day, right, that's going to carry through to everything you want. And if you don't work on yourself first, to be able to get yourself into the status of building, right? It's like you just build the house where there's no foundation, right? Or you build a big box store, right? You haven't done the infrastructure work, and then on that part, you're just like, okay, it should be good, right? But there's no basis for it. Well, many times we just want to jump to that without working on it. So the biggest part for the break block is being self-aware about how you're showing up, owning it, right? And that's the next piece. You can say, yeah, I'm showing up as a jerk. but it's justified, right? Or but like own it, like not putting yourself down, just saying, okay, that's how I am, and then position yourself for greatness, right? And so then that would be the part, right, of positioning yourself for greatness. The person I want to be has that person show up. Then you get into the build block. You have mastering meaningful habits and rituals, right? Because what are those habits? What are those rituals that really serve me for positioning myself in the right way? Then you have intentional execution, right? You can have all these habits and rituals, but then you have to do it day in and day out. You have to be disciplined to it. You have to make sure that you're really putting in the work, right? And then just facing the fear that comes with it. Because changing, right, it could be a many parts. You're changing, so you're becoming that new person within yourself, all right? And so you might face different feedback from your family, your friends, your network. So just being brave and in the circumstance that things are going to change, because when you change, it takes other people outside of the comfort they've had with you. Not that it's anything wrong, right? It might be from people that you love. They think they're giving you your best advice, but you just have to face that fear. And then the next piece, which is the Magnify, that's a lot of just having accelerated growth, right? Because once you do these things, you start growing, and you find that the growth goes in levels, right? At first it feels slow, then it feels like you're starting to pick up a little pace, and then it starts just exploding, right? Because you have everything running at the same time, everything running in the same way, and things can move in a very quick fashion from there. And then the last and final piece that comes in is all-inspiring rise. And that's where you're able to really not only do it for yourself, but just to help others to unblock themselves, get out of their own way. And that's one of the biggest pieces, is that you're doing this for yourself, but you're also doing this for all the other people around you. There's no fun if you're the one at the top of the mountain and looking down and just saying, oh, I guess everybody else, good luck. It's fun to have everybody else just succeeding with you and along for the ride.
Oh, I love all of this so much. Jason, we ask all of our guests what their favorite quote is about success. But before we do that, I want to know how you measure success personally.
So I guess in each little bucket is just the easiest thing, right? Would to be say something from the business side, but I'd say if I look for my kids, right? If I get them prepared enough, right? They're going to face challenge in the future. And if they can go properly prepare themselves to have good answers and be kind in the moment, then I've done a pretty good job as a dad. And I'd say that would be successful, right? The business, I look at the actions, right? I like, again, the goals are hard. Like our next mile marker is 5,000 units. I don't focus on that. We have like 3,500 right now, but we focus on doing the work each and every week, from just getting enough properties to be able to underwrite, making the appropriate offers, underwriting the right deal, making sure we're doing due diligence, closing about a project a quarter. Now, is it perfect? No, it might happen not every for 3 quarters. We might do 2 in 1 quarter and none for the next 2 quarters, right? It's a mix. But we find if we focus on those actions, that the goals just happen to show up, whether we like them or not.
Great answer. Well, then I'm going to ask it. What's your favorite quote about success?
Oh man. In some context, it's that, and I forget if it's Rockefeller or not. It's like, or was it Ford? It's that, you know, whether you do or you don't, right? You're going to be right in your mind, right? But and the through line there is that you can stay exactly where you want, right? And just think it's like the safer approach. But then somewhere down the road, you have to face your future self. And then, are you going to be okay with that? 30 years from now, saying like, I had that chance to stop that job and just go take that chance on writing a book, and then just exploring a little bit, or being at home with my kids and like starting a business. But I never did, because, there was a paycheck every Friday. Are you going to be okay with that 30 years from now? And maybe you could. Not everybody has to be a solo entrepreneur. But this podcast, there's people here that are taking action, crushing it, right? And know that every day it feels like it's hard with the decision you made, right? But if you just succeeded and everything was easy, you probably wouldn't be very grateful for what you got.
Love it. Well, Jason, you are awesome. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me on. You can go over to jasonyarusi.com. There's a free ebook there on breaking habits. The Live 100 podcast, very short form, 5-6 minute podcast that go out. And from a real estate side, if you want to learn more about what we do, yarusiholdings.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please leave that 5-star review, share this episode with a friend, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. And we'll see you next time on the Aspiring Solopreneur.